So it's gonna happen eventually. Yeah, there the Restream bot works just fine. Oh, Rug, you want to pet the cat? Yeah, we can do that. Sophie. All right. Time to read through this. Persisting data with Docker volumes. Objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to create a Docker volume, attach a Docker volume to a container. Content. Now that we have our Express CRUD app running in containers, we can begin working with it. I've used curl to insert several test tasks into the database. How about let's use curl to insert several test tasks into the database. So then we're going to do that, okay? And we can successfully get all of these tasks back with the getAll route. While it isn't a problem per se, the data in the database is inside the database container itself. That means if we need to delete the container for any reason and recreate it, the data will be gone. This might be what we want. However, we might also want the data to be separated from the container. We can do this with Docker volumes. Do you also teach people personally or just through your courses? I wonder, because that's the best way to know what students struggle with. Yeah, I want to... Eventually, I'm going to do a live course where it's going to be like, it's not going to be a one-on-one, but it's going to be like a group of people sort of like together learning. And I find that that's even better than one-on-one. If you have like a small group, I would imagine that I couldn't handle more than 10 people at the same time, especially at the beginning. I would need, if I was getting like more than 10 people like signing up to pay to do courses, I would probably at that point be like, hopefully be able to charge enough that I could then also hire some people to work with me and have multiple instructors. It also seems like more and more technical people are moving off Twitch to be YouTube only. Yeah, I saw Faster Than Lime's article on like why you want to do YouTube only. And I read through it and I wasn't 100% convinced. Now, maybe like, I think like some of the things that he was talking about, like there's some quality concerns, like the recordings have to be like set to a certain like lower amount, which right now I am artificially lowering the quality more than what even Twitch requires. So I should probably play around with that to see if I can get like higher quality recordings. For that, I think Discord stages are good. If someone wants to talk, he raises a virtual hand. Yeah, but that is that would be for like a classroom type thing. I guess not classroom. I don't like classrooms. It's the group dynamics, like where everybody knows each other and is like working together for that. I think that's really good. And Discord groups for that are perfect, and they're free, which is excellent. Okay, unlike networks, there are no default volumes. We can think of them as containers that just hold data instead of hold code or run programs. We can mount them to directories inside containers using the same docker run-v command that we do for sharing the directory between your host file system and the container. First, we'll need to create a volume using the docker volume create name command. Again, we can only attach the volume when creating the container, so we'll need to stop and delete the Postgres container. Then we'll be able to add the volume to the container with the option docker run -v volume name destination. Since this is a Postgres container, we'll need to find the directory where it stores the database data. We can find that on the Postgres Docker Hub page. In this case, it stores the database data at var-lib PostgreSQL data in the container. Let's create the Postgres container again, but now with the volume attached. Here's, that needs to be one line. Since we recreated the Postgres database container, the database is empty and we won't have the table set up. We can rerun the migrations to fix that. And now our database is available to use again. This time, however, if we need to delete and recreate the container, our data will persist as long as we continue to attach the volume. Go ahead and try it. All right. We're going to continue exactly where we left off here. So with those two containers created, all right. So what's left in this? We have a few things left before we get to Docker files, I think, but maybe not. That might be the next thing. All right, recording time. Let's do it. In the last lesson, we were able to get our ExpressCRUD container to connect to our database container, which is perfect. Now we're able to we're able to run our code, we're able to test our code, develop, and do all that stuff we want to do. But we do have one problem. If for some reason we need to drop our container and recreate it, all of our data is gone because the data is stored in the database container itself. So what happens if we need to just for some reason recreate it? Well, we have to start over from scratch again. Now, is that really a problem? We should be willing to lose all that data, but does that mean we should have to accept it? Probably not. Also, I don't want to have cat. I want to start over again. Or update the database version. Exactly. For some reason. So yeah, that's a good point for why we'd want to recreate the database container. Okay, let's do it again. In our previous lesson, we were able to connect our ExpressCRUD app with the Postgres container, and well, they access each other, and we're able to get all the tasks that don't really exist. Now we have a problem. What happens if we were to try to delete the container and recreate it? Well, let's go ahead and show off what would happen. We still have everything working as expected right now. So let's create several different tasks. We're going to use curl for this. I'm going to do curl. We have to set a header to tell it to be a content type application JSON. And then we have to give it some data, which is going to be in JSON form. This is going to be name, and the name is going to be, let's do task1, and we're going to send that to HTTP localhost 3020 tasks. Okay, so we've created one task. Let's go ahead and create two more with the great names task2 and then task3. And if we try to get back these tasks. So we just do our curl back together. Here's our tasks. We get them back. Everything is great. But now, what happens if we, for some reason, need to recreate our database container? Well, we can force the issue, right? We can just say Docker, what is it called? Docker stop express crud pg. Let's in fact just Docker remove express crud pg, and we'll do another Docker run for our Postgres container. It's up and running. And if we now try to connect with it and get all these tasks, we're back to this point again, where now it can connect to the database just fine, but the tasks are gone, which means that the entire table is just gone. Why did that happen? Well, the data for the data for the Postgres database is inside that container. So when we deleted it, all the data is gone too, which sometimes can be good, but not necessarily what we want. Now, there's a couple different reasons why we might want to recreate the container. We might just, want to we want to test a different version. Like maybe we're moving from Postgres like 16.1 to 16.2, and we wanted to change the tag for that. And we want to keep all that data. Well, we can do that with a volume. So volumes are just like networks, except there are no default ones, and we can mount them just like we do with the local host volume mount, except it's from the container itself. What we can do, we can list out what the volumes that we have, and I probably already have some by default. So let's do a Docker volume ls, and yeah, I have a bunch of them that are sitting here, that I've previously created. You'll probably have nothing in your list, and that's perfectly fine. You'll notice that there's really not much here. We just have a name and then the driver. So to create our own, we're going to do Docker volume create and then the name of it. So in this case, we're going to do express crud, that's just PG. And there we go. So we just created express crud PG as the volume name. Let's go ahead and remove, so Docker stop this container, because again, we have to attach it when we create the container. We can't attach it after the container has already been created. Okay, so here's our previous command that we're using, where it's this right before we go to start Postgres after the network. The order doesn't really matter. I'm going to use -v to set the volume, and it's going to be the name of the volume. So express crud pg : and then where it's going to go. Well, that's an interesting thing. Where do we put it? Well, it's going to depend upon whatever system we're using. Right now, in this case, we didn't create the Postgres image, so we're going to have to go look at the documentation to figure out where exactly that is. Let's open up our documentation. We're going to head over to Docker Hub and find the Postgres image. And in here somewhere, it should tell us where the data for the database lives. And so we're just going to go find that. And I've like several times gone over it, so it bears in mind like sort of looking carefully through it. All right, PG data. When mounting a volume to, okay, so this looks pretty good. There is, I think, one more area where, is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. So when mounting a volume to, so we don't want this one. We want this, varlib PostgreSQL data. And that's where we're going to mount into. And that's where it stores the database itself. And if we put that into this volume, then as long as we don't delete the volume, we can delete the container and reattach this volume to the same place, and that data will persist. As long as we don't use like a new container that requires a different type of, well, database format, which Postgres usually doesn't do, then we'll be fine. So let's come back to here, and we're going to attach you there. So Express CRUD, let's make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. Express CRUD pg /var lib PostgreSQL data, and then everything else is exactly the same. We hit return. Now, because we just created a new container, everything is reset. So we do have to do our exec command again to create the table. So let's go ahead and run that again. So we do docker exec, run that npx connects migrate up. Let's also redo our curl command to create the 3 tasks. Okay, that created one of them. So I want to do curl 2. Okay, so those are all 3 created. And then finally, if we do our get the tasks, we now see them all out. Let's test this. Let's actually stop, remove our container and create a new one and see if our data is still there. So I'm going to do a docker stop again for Express CRUD PG, another docker remove, and then finally a docker run again for Express CRUD, with making sure that it has the same volume that we used before. And now if we just use our previous curl to get all the tasks, we get all the tasks. We don't need to reset the database. We don't need to do anything else. All that data remains and is good to go. And this is it. Again, is this something that's absolutely essential for developing with Docker? No, but does it make it much more pleasant for us to use because we don't have to like constantly reset this every time we want to, like, well, for some reason reset the database? Absolutely yes. This is, in my mind, this is one of those like super nice things to have, and it will save a lot of time in the long run. And that's it. We have now this is how to use volume containers. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Naveen, hello. How are you doing today? What is Docker? Docker is people usually say like Docker is like a containerizing system. The most basic way I can explain it, which is only kind of sort of a lie, is that it's a way to virtually run other operating systems on like inside of your computer. And you can use that to then like wrap around whatever code you want to run and then just sort of like run them. And they're semi-isolated from your host system. They're not quite as isolated as using like a true virtual machine, but they're definitely more isolated than not using one at all. Does that help? Does that explain it? And like even like, I guess like, does that work for you? That explanation? No cats on the course is just boring. Well, of course. Someday when I have enough courses, we can do a trivia where it's like, okay, in which timestamp in which course is Zilby's tail visible? All right, so now we're on to the Docker file. Now it gets really powerful. Create a custom Docker image with the Docker file. Nope, that's not what I want. Oh, you're concerned I was muted for a moment? Yeah, I guess I just wasn't talking. Saving my voice for the videos, right? Okay, well, obviously create a Docker file to run the Express, to run custom code. To create a custom Docker image. And then I don't know if I want to put anything else in there. All right. Create a custom Docker image with a Docker file. Objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to create a Docker file to create a custom Docker image. Content. We have our Docker containers up and running and everything seems great. However, the Docker run command we need to use is a bit messy. It's unfortunately easy to mess up that command if you had multiple people on the same team, and you are using Docker to try to keep everyone consistent. We can fix this by creating our own custom Docker image using a Docker file. Let's take a look at the Docker file. Let's take a look at the Docker file for the Express CRUD project. And so this is what I've already written in there. Now I just threw in the most recent version, which I think has changed. Because I think this is now all of this stuff. Now oh yeah, because it has the Alpine things in there too. It's fine. Let's walk through each command in the Docker file and why we have them. Okay, from node 20. I guess here, let's look at the Docker file for the Express CRUD project. You may notice I should find a specific commit. Oh, but they're probably just going to go over to it. Let's not reference this at all. Let's take a look at the Docker file we'll be creating for the Express CRUD project. How about that? Let's walk through each command in the Docker file and why we have them. From node 20. This line is telling Docker to use another image as a base. We cannot create a Docker image from nothing. It has to start on top of something else. In this case, we want to use the node image from Docker Hub with the tag 20. Since this is hard-coded, any developers on your team that pull down the project will be using the same image when developing. They can't accidentally use Docker, node 22. Or my favorite one was when I saw somebody using node 10 when 18 was out. I was like, wait, what? How? Stop it. Okay, then we have the two runs, run touch hello, run echo hello world to hello. The run command lets us run code when the image is being created. In this case, we're creating an empty file and then in another command, adding a string to that file. Expose 3000. We're telling Docker that we'll be exposing the given port, in this case, 3000 to the host system. This is mostly to communicate with other developers since we can expose a port using the -p3000 option when creating a container regardless. And really, it was like the 3000. That's the one we've been using, so I want to keep that. There is an option docker run -p, which will auto map host ports to container ports using the exposed ports in the Docker file. These ports are randomly generated on the host side, so this makes it more difficult to predict what they're going to be. More difficult meaning impossible. Okay, Docker file, so env, port 3000, db URI. We can set environment variables inside the image. All containers that are created will get these variables, so we won't need to set them when using the docker run command. Please note that they are hard-coded into the Docker file and therefore will be pushed to GitHub or wherever you store code. If you have any truly secret environment variables that must stay out of your repo, then add them to the container with the docker run -e key value command. Volume/code. Similar to the expose command, this tells Docker to create a directory that will be used as a mount point. You can still mount anywhere with the docker run -v option though, so this ends up being more documentation for other developers so they know where to mount their volumes. Okay, health check. We can tell Docker to run a health check for the containers and publish the result in the Docker PS list. This allows us to see if the containers are healthy from a glance. In this specific case, we're running the curl command to our health check route 5 seconds after the container is launched. If the command fails, it will wait 30 seconds before trying again. It will repeat this a total of 3 times before it gives up and marks the container as unhealthy. Workdir code. The default directory that everything after I feel like this is hard to read. The default directory that everything after this will run in. There's a better way for me to write that, isn't there? The default the workdir command sets the default directory that all commands later in a file after sets the default directory for all commands that run after this line in the Docker file. Note that the CMD later doesn't have to change directory. It just assumes that we are in the /code directory. Perfect. Command npm run dev. This is the command that will be executed by the container when we create it by default. Note that we don't need to tell it what directory to start in. We just assume we're there because of the workdir command above it. Building the image. We have the Docker file. Now what? We can build our custom image and give it a tag of our choice. We can do this with the docker build -t tag name dot command. The -t tag name tags the image with the name of our choice. The dot tells the build command where the Docker file is. If we aren't in the same directory as the Docker file, then we can use the -f option. We can now see our custom image. To use this, we'll use the docker run command, but this time we can leave out any of the options that we set up inside the Docker file, like the environment variables. The run command is significantly simpler to use now, and when we ran the docker ps command, we can see that the health check is passing. We don't always need to create a Docker image, but if we find that we were adding many customizations or options when creating the container, we might want to simplify by creating our own image. And that's it. Okay. And this is also why we don't end up creating an image for the Postgres container, because that's not too complex. All right, next up. So I'm probably going to go to the Docker reference. And just start up here because it has everything we need, and looking through that is going to be fine. And then the other thing, we'll go back and forth looking at our code that we have. So perfect, we'll start here. I guess this is fine. This Docker file, at this point, I can probably just erase you, and we'll start over from scratch with it. Perfect. Okay. I think we're good to go. In fact, you know what? We can do one step further. Let's just delete this file. Which is even better. Sylvie, you look like you want something. Is there anything you want? I bet he's hungry. We skipped his lunch. He had breakfast, and now he's just slept here with us during lunchtime, and he probably wants me to make food. So during the next break, I'll probably make him some lunch, grab another drink, and then come back down. Give it to him. And that's probably when he'll steal my chair too. So that might be a way for me to get it back. Okay. All right. I think we're about ready to go. I did forget to give you ZilbyCam back again, so sorry about that. Let's see. I don't think I need anything, so time for us to start. We have an entire working app ecosystem now inside of Docker. We're able to run our two containers, connect them to each other, and then dev with them. But there is a problem. If we were to take a look at the Express container that we're creating, so let's do our Docker run and up arrow until I find, yeah, here's our Express CRUD command that we're running here. And this is not easy to look at. There's tons of things in here. Now there's some things that, like, no matter what we'll need, but not for everything. So Okay, never mind. Zilby wants to hang out. This is one of those times when Zilby just decides he wants to be, he doesn't like being a lap cat, so he likes to be a held cat. Not just in my lap, but also like taking over my arms. And of course he's purring, so I guess now we get to hang out, and I can't even move my hands to like go, like switch the screen to like the larger view. So I guess any of you have any questions about Docker? The only thing I can do right now is talk, really. Oh, are you done? Okay. That's how long Zilby likes to be a lap cat, as it were. Not very long. But I am covered in fur now. As it should be. All right. We get to start over again. Take 2. Are you gonna meow in the middle of this because you want me to go up and feed you? 20 more minutes. 20 minutes. I promise. Okay, take 2. In the previous lessons, we've got our development set up. We're able to create our database container and our Express CRUD container, so that way, well, everything just works the way we expect them to. It's not really a problem per se, but if we take a look at this command, this is the run command to create the Express CRUD container. It's a bit nasty. And there's a way for us to make this a little bit easier. And that way, if we're on a team, we can, it will be less complications for us to share that with our team members and less chances for them to mess something up. Like, for example, what happens if instead of node 20, they just do node by accident? And then they're using the latest version of node, which might not be compatible with our application. So the way to do this is to create a custom image, and we can do that with a Docker file. Now, to create a Docker file, we generally do this in the root of our application. So over here, I'm just going to right click and create a new file, and it's Docker file with a capital D, all one word, no dot, no anything. It's just Docker file. Now, VS Code immediately recognizes what this is and even gives me the nice little whale icon next to it. So how do we build the Docker file? Well, there's a Docker reference, a Docker file reference in docker.com that I like to use whenever I build a new Docker file. And so here we are at it. We're just going to go through. I'm going to keep everything where I can see the contents on the right, because I use this usually to sort of look through and see what I want to see. So to begin with, the first part of this is the from. And the from allows us to choose what the base image is. What are we starting from? Because we're creating a brand new image, it has to be based on something. Now, in this case, we want to base it on the previous command that we had, which, if we go back to our editor, is this one, node 20. So I'm going to type from, and our base image is node 20. Okay, great. And then we can actually just go through here and just figure out like what can we do to like recreate what we have here. Now the daemon mode, we're gonna have to like continue to have this in the next command. The name, okay, we have to set that on a command line too. Oh, environment variables. Let's go back to our reference and see the environment variables, which is Unfortunately, this is not in alphabetical order, down in env. So this allows us to set an environment variable with key value pairs inside the Docker file, which is perfect. So we have two environment variables we want to set here for our Express CRUD app. So we're going to do env. Now the first one is going to be port and equals, and we want that to be 3000. And then the second one is going to be db URI, and we're going to set that to Postgres keyboard cat Express CRUD PG. I'm not quite sure why it's able to figure out exactly what that is. I might have another file that has these values in it in this directory, and that's where it's figuring it out. Let's see, Express CRUD PG, and then Postgres. Okay, so those are our two environment variables. Volumes. So we can set what directory to go into the volume, but as we can see right here, we can just sort of override that at any time. So really the setting the volumes is kind of like documentation for other developers if they're trying to figure out where the container or where the image expects your stuff to go. So I'm gonna do volume, and we want to create the volume in /code. Okay, port. Once again, we can override the port just when we create the containers. This is again sort of like a suggestion. There is a command with a -P that allows us to auto assign whatever ports we put in here into the Docker file, but it does random ports on a host system, which makes it impossible for us to predict what they are. I don't really like to use that ever. I like to hard code and set what those are when we run it. Now we can do that with the expose command, and we'll find expose right here. So expose the port, and we could also say if it's TCP or UDP, and the default is TCP, and we're working with TCP here. All right, so expose, we want to expose port 3000. Next up, we have this -W for the work directory. And we can go find work directory down here. This sets the working directory for all following commands to whatever this is, which is really nice. So we want everything now to happen in, well, /code. So we can just do workdir /code. Let's see, what else do we have in here? There's a w-code. Oh, the network. Well, we can't really set the network inside of the Docker file, so that will be something we still have to do down here. We have the node 20. Oh, and then this npm run dev. This is the command we want to run inside of the container whenever we launch it. Well, we can do that with the command. We have to go find it, and here somewhere, there it is, command. And there's two different ways for us to run this. The exec form is the one that I see more people use more often, but you can just put the command out here like this. Either way should work just fine. I'm going to do the exec form because it's you do need to make sure it's all together like this, and maybe seeing me do this will help in case you run into a problem. All right, so we're going to do a command executable method. So we want to run npm, and then we can't put anything together. It all has to be in this array, essentially, whatever the separate thing. So npm run dev. Okay. And that should be it. That should let us now run everything we need to. Now, there's more things that can happen inside of the container. Like, for example, if you need to set anything up for this, we can use the run command. So run, and then we can just do something in here. Like for example, we could run touch like a file name, and that would literally run the command touch file name and create a file name in /code, because of course that's where the workdir is. I'm not going to do that here. All right, so we're going to save that, and now we need to create the image. To create the image, we're going to run the docker build command. So it's going to be docker build -t for tagging, and we give it the name and then the tag at the same time. And if we leave out the tag, it's going to be latest by default. Now here we get the choice. If we have an account on Docker Hub, we can use our username, but locally it doesn't really matter. We can just set this to be whatever we want. So we can just say, hey, this is Express CRUD as the image name. And I know that's the same as the official Docker names. I won't be able to upload this to Docker Hub because it's not namespaced. But if it's just local, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. And then we're going to give it a tag of latest here. I like to hard code that, but it doesn't really matter. If you want to create multiple images from the same Docker file, but maybe with like slight changes to them, you can do that with different tags at this point. And then I give it dot to tell it, okay, I want to run here, and it's going to find the Docker file. We only have one Docker file, so I don't need to like give it any other options to say, hey, go find the Docker file over there. Just choose this one. And so when I hit return, it builds everything. This probably will take a little bit longer on your system the first time through, because Docker tends to cache everything it can to make this faster the next time, and it used everything from cache that it could. So it rebuilt this. We can now run Docker images, and somewhere in here, here's our Express CRUD image. 23 seconds ago, it is 1.1 gigabytes in size. So, you know, it's gotten pretty big. That being said, we can now run this just like we ran the other one. So if we take a look at our docker run command, let me go ahead and just copy that, paste it back down here. We have docker run. So I still want this in daemon mode. I still want to give it the name Express CRUD. Oh, I should stop the previous one. So we're going to do docker stop Express CRUD. And docker remove Express CRUD. And okay, we're going to now rerun this. Wait, what did I get? I got way more than I needed to do. There you go. Okay, docker run. Okay, so the -t, I still need that to run this in daemon mode. --name, I need to give this the name, so that's important. -e, I no longer need this -e for the environment variables. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two environment variables from here because these are baked into the image itself. The volume, I do need to set the volume because otherwise the Docker image doesn't know to connect to our current directory. So dot to /code, that's okay. Port, I still need to set this so I can know it knows to map port 3020 on our local system to 3000 internally. The -w /code, I don't need this anymore because the Docker image knows to set the work director. The network, we need that because otherwise it doesn't know what network to connect to, and it would connect by default to the default network, which is not what we want. Instead of node 20, I'm now going to put Express CRUD. And I don't have to put in the :latest. It will auto look for latest if I don't leave it on. I'm going to just put it on anyways. And then I don't have to run this command. I don't have to set what the command is going to be because we've already set the command here. So if I run this, it just auto starts And now if we run our tasks again, so let's do our curl into the tasks. We hit that. Our tasks are still there. Everything is working as we expected, and we've greatly simplified the command that we need to run to start everything up. And that's going to be the power of the Docker file, because now if you're on a team, you can share everybody else how to run the Docker build command, and they can just build that up. And then you can rest assured that they all are running based upon the same technology at the same time. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. All right, good. This is 3:57. Okay, not too much time. Zilby is, he meowed a few times. I have no idea if that got overheard, that was hearable, if the microphone picked that up. And he was literally jumping off the walls a few times, and he like ran back and forth down here. So he's bothered by something. I think he might want to go, he might want me to go upstairs and either feed him or be with him while he like uses his litter box. So I'm probably gonna take an extended break. Sylvie's not here right now, so I guess I don't really have a break window. We'll just I'll be back in like 10 minutes or so. I don't know how long it's gonna take. Hopefully not too long, and then we'll go and start working on this. So I will be back shortly. I guess I could put the Zilby cam up. Even though that he's not here. Maybe this will work. Okay, anyways, see you in a few minutes, and ads will start in 3, in case you want to run away from those.